Awesome. So like Helen said, my name's Emily Frenzen. I'm a junior at the university studying agricultural communications, and Sage will be joining me in a few minutes. She had a class that she's coming from, but her major is agricultural education, and she is a sophomore here as well. So Sage and I were placed in McCook, like Helen said, at the High Plains Museum was our primary project. So here our job was to assess the assets of the museum and create a plan of action. So different from some of the other projects, we won't necessarily see results until we go back in a year or three. It's supposed to be a 3 to 5 year process. So at first that was kind of challenging for us, but it was really exciting to hand over our plan book to them at the end of the term of our internship. And it's exciting to see what will happen in the future, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But our first few weeks in McCook, we went to 5 different museums with our leadership mentor, Carol Schlegel, and that was really great for us to kind of like gather some other ideas and explore that side of Nebraska, because neither of us really have a whole lot of experience in Southwest or Western Nebraska, so that was really fun for us. And then we took pictures of every single item in the museum to get an inventory. They wanted that for insurance purposes and just to know what they had in the museum, because there's a lot of really, really cool artifacts in there. And that was really useful for us to figure that out as well. So we took over 4,000 photographs that we inventoried and labeled. So that was quite the project. And then we also conducted 30 in-person interviews. We walked up and down their main street and interviewed all the people we could find about their experience at the museum. And then we had over 100 results from our online survey. And from those, it was really interesting. Some people didn't know that there was a museum in McCook, so we realized we kind of had to create that awareness as well. And I think being there and doing those surveys was a really great way of just kind of snagging the attention of people. So after we kind of finished those things, then the first weeks of being there, we used a software called SketchUp. So we actually made designs for almost every single room at the museum and then handed this over to them in our plan book. So this room, this sample, is the Carnegie Library. So that's part of the museum there. It's a really cool architectural space. So we thought this would be an awesome use for the community. Right now it's set up as it was 60 years ago, so that's really cool. We want to keep that historical aspect, but we thought it could be used as a meeting room because that's one thing McCook said they kind of needed more meeting space for their organizations and things. So this space over here is already existing. We just added more tables and things in there, more bookshelves, and we suggested preserving those bookcases better as well. And then this back half would be a kitchenette, and then there's not handicap accessible entrances right now, so that's something we included, and we also included bathrooms, so this could be used as an event space or a collaborative space for the community. And then this is a design that Sage made. So the railroad is a really vital aspect of McCook. That's kind of what initially made it the hot spot of Southwest Nebraska. So this is one of the first rooms that they will be kind of updating. So in here, a couple things I'll highlight on. As you can see, this railroad track along the wall, we thought of making some sort of timeline. So there will be like a mural of a railroad on the wall, and then along the tracks will be a timeline of all the events that have happened in McCook there. And then a lot of things really just need to be labeled. So that's another thing we suggested in general. So the museum director, John Hubert, has an immense amount of knowledge about everything in the museum. So we actually did some video interviews with him, and there will be a video about the museum and the impact of the railroad on McCook in this room. So this is kind of an introductory room to McCook and the railroad. So we handed over those rough cuts of the video to them as well, and then someone will piece that together for them in the future. So our secondary projects were community photography, which there are a few examples there. That's for the Southwest Nebraska Coalition, the tourism coalition they're creating. So we had a lot of fun with that. Since we're both photographers, we just got to travel to other communities in Southwest Nebraska and take pictures of the main streets and all the fun hot spots. So this is Rocket Inn Pizza, and that's like a really popular place. I guess on Friday nights there's lines out the door. We never got to go there on Friday night, but that's a popular one. And then the farmers market in Trenton was really cool. That town, I think the population is just over 300, and they just have this really cool town square for their farmers market, which draws people in as well. So it's really cool to find those niche places in each community that draws people in. So the other two programs I'll touch on are the McCook Mastermind Alliance and the Accelerated Interns of McCook program. So both of those last two were under the McCook Economic Development Corporation with Andy Long. So the McCook Mastermind Alliance, this idea of a mastermind group is still something kind of new we found with our research, but it's really cool because it's just a group of anywhere from 6 to 10 people who are just really invested in one another. They meet weekly, and then they just talk about their strengths, their weaknesses, successes, and failures. So that can be like a business model. It could be like for women who are expecting. So there's a lot of really cool like ways you can do it. It can be a niche market, or it can just be people who have the same ideals. But the idea for McCook is to focus on leadership development. Andy is a great resource for that. So that's what they'll be focusing on there. So for this program, we kind of created the structure, an application, and then some brochures and materials for that. So this is just an example of that. And then to kick off both of these events, we actually hosted a fiesta. So that's where we kind of gave a presentation about the mastermind program and the internship program, which I'll touch on. This is something really neat because there's not really anything like this in Nebraska in a rural community, and Andy actually had this idea. There's a similar program in Kansas, but Sage and I kind of created a model similar to our experience with RFI because we loved it so much. So the idea of this is that the businesses will have help hiring and finding their interns, and then the students will also go through a 2-day training before they do the internship. And then obviously they can connect with students who maybe will become the next generation of leaders and workforce at their business. And then they also get to promote the rural potential and idea of bringing those people back home to work. So this is for high school and college students, which is really neat. And obviously for students, it's a great way for them to discover career opportunities, especially for those high school students, kind of getting that in the back of their minds right away before they go to college. And then they will also do bi-weekly meetings similar to the bi-weekly Zoom calls we had for RFI. That's something we really enjoyed as far as getting feedback, and then you just become more connected with one another. So it also creates a good social aspect for the students that are there. And then we also thought it would be great to include that service learning aspect because we found that the service hours we completed this summer were just a really great way for us to meet more people in the community and get further involved with that. So we also created the materials for this and the application, and yeah, there's an application for the businesses and then for the students, which is also similar to the RFI Serviceship. So this will launch next summer and applications will start in December, so that's very exciting. So what we did, we submitted to them our detailed plan of action. I think we had like a 30-page binder for each board member at the end of it. They were a little overwhelmed, I think, but they'll have some time to go through it all. And then when we got there, like I kind of mentioned earlier, we realized we really just had to create an awareness for these projects and kind of get the ball rolling. So one thing with that we also wanted to do was just bring excitement in for those and kind of re-energize the community around those things. A lot of people had said they had been to the museum, but they hadn't been there for 12 years or since they were a child. So kind of like making some new changes there and just re-energizing that. Sage and I are also both part of the Angler Entrepreneurship Program. So this internship experience was especially useful for us to kind of like see how entrepreneurship plays a role in this community development. And especially in McCook, there's a lot of really great up and coming businesses, and they just have a great support system for those businesses. They are really awesome at supporting local. So that was really great for us to see because both of us hope to eventually return to a rural community. So it's awesome to know that there are those opportunities for us should we decide to become business owners. And And we also were able to make some really, really great connections while we were there. I think Sage and I both felt that we were very fortunate to have the leadership we did. Carol Schlegel and Andy Long were awesome to work with and really impacted our lives, I would say. And then we were just able to form those connections with the board members as well, which was really awesome. So I think we left with a great appreciation for the people that we met this summer. And then last point, rural is cool. So also while we were there, we both talked about how we just wanted to represent the university and RFI the best we could. So we thought bringing in the energy we have and just trying to be positive and maybe setting an example for students who are still in high school that, you know, it is cool to come back to your community at the end of your college experience. And yeah. I think that's pretty much all we have. Is there anything you would like to touch on about the experience and how you felt when we left?
I would just say that it was an amazing experience. I loved it this summer. Emily probably touched on that too a lot, how cool it was. I think the best part about the Rural Futures Institute this summer too was that we got to and really invest in a community and get to know those people, and then they basically reinvested in us. And so that just forming that relationship was just really cool and an experience that I don't think I could have got anywhere else other than this Serviceship. So yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies, you did a great job. Sage, I know. That first day of classes, it's hard to get out. It's okay. It's totally okay. Your partner did a great job.
Killed it.
And I know both of you worked very hard on this together. So, any questions?
Okay, so as an old museum guy, I was fascinated by the passion you seem to develop for the High Plains Museum project. I don't think that necessarily comes naturally. But so talk a little bit about why that happened and why you got as invested in that project as you did. Was it subject matter? Was it other relationships that helped to grow that in the community? I'm curious. You really had an impact. I mean, and this is going to be a tremendous long-term legacy for the community. I know that's my home territory, and I know there are people in and around that community that really believe the development of that museum will be something for generations to come that creates kind of a corner post for them.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, sure. So I think a huge part of that was, so at the beginning of our project, I think probably Emily mentioned it, we took over 4,000 photos. And so I think when we went through everything and just, we knew probably everything in the museum after that, and then we just started seeing how many really cool items and artifacts were in that museum. And then we started meeting the people involved and getting to know the museum board and really investing in them. And so then that became a thing where we had already formed these relationships, and then we had formed almost this relationship with the museum itself, and that we really became passionate about wanting to make it known to the community, because I think a lot of people have lived there for a long time that we spoke to maybe hadn't gone back since they were young. And so we just thought it was so cool coming in how many amazing things are in there and how many people maybe hadn't seen that. And so that passion was kind of ignited when we wanted to connect those two things, and we wanted to share that with people. And so I think that was a huge part of it, is that we got involved in the museum itself, like the artifacts, and then the people that were involved in it. The museum board, we invested in those relationships and how amazing they were, and we wanted to make that known to the community. And I think that was, it's kind of hard to describe in words, but it was really cool how we really became passionate about the project, and really how amazing the museum was, and wanting to share that with Southwest Nebraska and the rest of the state. So
I'd like to know a little bit more about things you didn't expect that ended up happening. You know, what kind of surprised you? What happened that you didn't expect but you learned from? How did it stretch you?
Yeah, some of it, I don't know if we really knew what to expect going into it, but one thing we did kind of struggle with initially was winning over the museum board, because obviously we have no experience with museums at all, and here we come, two college students, you know, giving them a plan of action. So
Yeah.
I think that was probably one of our biggest hurdles that I mean, like I wasn't expecting. I don't know about you, but kind of like forming that relationship with them and earning their trust in the beginning. That was probably the biggest thing, I would say. But we met with each of them individually during our first few weeks there, which I think really helped form that relationship. I think we spent like an hour or two with each member. We went into some of their homes, or we would meet them at St. Ertz, the local coffee shop in Delhi. So that was one way we kind of did that. And would you add anything else to that?
Yeah, I would say something that was really interesting was when we met with them individually, they were more receptive to our ideas when we got to know them first versus the people that we didn't meet with. There was a few we didn't have time to, or there was just some conflict we couldn't get together. And those people were the more apt to be more abrasive to our ideas versus the people we'd had met with before and got to know and invested in. So, yeah.
I think doing the surveys helped too, because some of the board also wasn't really sure about the change in general. Some of them were in favor of change. And then when we did the surveys, we found that like more than 90% wanted change in the museum and the community. So that was also really useful as well.
Yep.
Great. Yeah, that was a huge, I mean, just seeing that graph was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
So, quick question. I don't know that I heard you guys talk about your legacy. What is your legacy leaving your community?
That's a big question. I think a lot of it was the fact that two college students even would be willing to come and invest in a smaller community, because I think rural communities are decline. It seemed the common trend is, but we want to reverse that, is that rural communities seem to be declining and people don't want to come back as much. And so I think the cool part was that we really did want to invest and get to know those people in the rural communities, and I think they really appreciated that. And we appreciated the fact that they wanted to invest in us. And so that relationship was just so cool. I think more than the project itself was the relationships we formed, and the fact that there's like that mutual investment going on throughout the summer was just really amazing. And it's kind of heartwarming to think about it too, is just that where both sides are more than willing to give back both ways. So
Yeah, and then building off of that, one thing we used a lot this summer was flip charts. We had them hanging up all over our office, and on one of our Zoom calls, Helen asked us that question about what legacy we want to leave, and we kind of like wrote a flip chart up about what we wanted to leave, and everything Sage said, and then kind of more of that. We also just talked about how we wanted to bring that energy and positivity back to the community as well, and especially to the museum, because that's something we found that was lacking there, kind of that enthusiasm, like just lightening up the space and bringing the life back to it, I think, in general. So those were probably the biggest things.
Great job, ladies. Thank you so much for your contributions.
thank you.